life and confidence coach Dianna Leeder, and this is my podcast, the Crave More Life Roadshow. It's here we talk about emotional hits and lovingly kicking our own asses to get through them. Just so you know, it always comes down to being your beautiful, sassy self, living and loving from you, no matter what. So join me to hear about the healing journeys of other women, and you just might become a DIY ass kicker too. Hey listeners, welcome back to the Roadshow. This is another interview with the men of the men's book. You're listening to my interview with DK Warinner, contributing author of Find Your Voice, Save Your Life 4 Transcendent Men, Real Stories. You will find DK's full bio in the show notes. See you soon. Hey everyone! If you're stuck on the hamster wheel of chronic stress and anxiety, you're going to want to meet my guest today. I'm Dianna Leeder, host of the Crave More Life Roadshow podcast. I'm an intuitive life coach and life hack who helps people get what they want by finding their voice. I'm also the proud lead author of the Find Your Voice, Save Your Life book series, available on Amazon, including the award-winning Powerful Healer Spiritual Stories and the about-to-be-published Find Your Voice, Save Your Life 4 Transcendent Men, Real Stories, which we will be talking about today. My guest today is DK Warinner, founder of the Center of Calmness, and I'm happy to introduce him as a contributing author in Find Your Voice 4 with his chapter, Finding My Center of Calmness. DK is a consultant, author, and coach who supports executives and entrepreneurs with his DK Method that works in the moment to find clarity and focus professionally and personally. DK learned and refined the DK Method through decades of struggle with and elimination of chronic anxiety and stress. Welcome to the show, DK.
Thanks so much, Dianna. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very, very happy to have you here. It's awesome. And I loved your chapter. There's something about anxiety and stress that it just affects so many of us that to have some concentrated effort on that on its own, I think is marvelous. And I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. So let's get started. And will you please just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to develop this Center of Calmness and your own DK Method?
Absolutely, Dianna. And I wonder if I might just start at the beginning and identify that it just started right at that moment where this became a concern for me, right? And for me, that story begins all the way when I was 2 years old. I'm riding on the back of my dad's Raleigh, so you can imagine one of these old school 10-speed bicycles, and one of these not so child safe seats on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And two-year-old me sitting on the back of that thing, and there was just something about one of those rides where intuitively I had a sense that something wasn't right with the ride or something was about to happen. I had that I don't want to be there thought, and it was like a strong vibration going through, but I was only 2 years old. What am I going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on this ride, and sure enough, we take a spill. There's an accident. There's some pain involved, and whatever there was about that moment that my mind picked up. It picked up, okay, I told you, and you didn't listen to me, and now this happened, and so now I'm going to make sure that never happens again, right? So that was the beginning of a chronic anxiety and panic attack syndrome that started right from age 2 all the way through, really into my 40s,
Wow.
if I want to take the whole story through, right? And so you can imagine through, all the way through grade, junior high, high school, all the way through college, and even in some areas of my professional experience. I could, for example, be in Europe in one of those little cars zipping up and down the European hillsides and just basically freaking out in the back seat, going, when's this ride going to be over, right? Because my mind is triggering, saying you're in the same environment as you were when you were 2 years old. And even though for most of that time frame I didn't know the connection between those two, I had this panic. I worked really hard on suppressing it, and I was successful to a degree. But there was a point when I reached a corporate environment, and during this time I went through engineering school, became an engineer, became a manager, and eventually led product programs and worked my way into business strategy. So I was, if you can think of this like building up to be a product line manager, right? So I joined a corporation that moved me around a couple times, and they put me in this place in Florida that I thought was this great. It's a promotional opportunity. It's a new product line. It'll be awesome. Well, the environment there at the office was not nearly so awesome. That was my first exposure to a truly toxic, in my view, a corporate environment where it wasn't so much supportive, collaborative. It was more of every person for themselves, and I had never experienced that before. So over time, and just being a human being, of course, I didn't toe the line exactly the way they perhaps would have expected. And I ran into some snags, some traps, and eventually my intuition was getting triggered there too, saying you've got a problem here. There's some folks that are kind of lining up on the other side of the line of where you're at. And the more I became aware of that, the more triggered I became, until it
Right.
was really like walking through the mud, just getting through the workday. And that was where I began to see my career, if you will, down spiraling. I had had a nice rise up to that point, and I had built a nice reputation with this particular corporation. But something about this office and how I was reacting to it was creating a serious problem for my path forward, if you will, at least in my mind. And the anxiety was tripping. The panic attacks were coming in the office, like I was having palpitations and things, with no apparent visible dangers, but just feeling and seeing the politics and the gossip and so on and so forth was
Mhm.
what it was really was hitting me a lot harder than perhaps it hits other people. And the picture cleared up at one point, right, where I was able to step away for just a moment and say, this is something that's got to get fixed. Either I must move on, or I've got to make a change here somewhere.
Mhm.
And but at that time too, I was beginning to see the perspective of managing this, not from managing my life choices so much, but managing the internal stress as an option. And right when I switched over to thinking about that, I actually had a moment where I was able to walk into the ocean and just spend maybe 30, 60 minutes just standing in the ocean and enjoying that moment of really being free, right? In the moment, to looking out over the waves and being in a place that I really felt at peace. And it was that moment where I just felt all that tension that I'd been carrying up to that point just release, almost like it exited straight through my feet. So that was my first grounding experience. And it was at that moment when I realized this is a fixable problem. This is something that can be addressed. It doesn't have to be, this is where I come up with this phrase, it doesn't have to be that way, this way,
Right.
where I was carrying the stress, or I was in the environment that I was in. And even though I could probably say that everything that I was perceiving was true, I didn't have to carry the stress that came with it necessarily, right? So that was my first eye opening, my glimmer of hope that there's something I could do about this. And really, it's that moment, and then looking back to some meditative martial arts training that I had in the past, as well as beginning to develop those skill sets that eventually became the DK method. That's where it began, and over time, I was able to take that, if what I call that residual stress, from a yellow to red state, if you will. If you can imagine red being the situation where you might wake up and get out of bed like totally stressed out from minute one.
Mhm.
Maybe a yellow is just you're always in caution mode and in a fight or flight, right? Green is just level, totally cool and chill, enjoying the morning as you wake up. I reached a point where that red became a green, where I got out of bed one day and suddenly totally green. I'm like, okay, I got no stress today, right? So it was just, and the first time that happened was such a relief. I actually took a sigh of relief at that. Okay, I've arrived.
Yeah.
I could just be myself. And I mean, it wasn't that stress conditions never occurred after that, but I handled them differently after that point. And then from there, I was able to distill that into a 5-minute method that I taught a few of my first students. And just at first, I just shared it with them and said, would you test this out and just let me know how you react to it, how you might respond. And all of those folks had actually just gone through a speaking opportunity where they spoke for 60, 90 seconds about what they offer. And they all said, it would have been great if I would have had this before I went up on stage
Yeah.
and spoke. They felt the shift, and that's where I knew that this was not just a method for myself, but I could actually transfer it to others.
Right. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, okay. There's so many places I could go with this, but I want to go back to right at the beginning. You know, when you were a 2-year-old, that you know that you remember that, and know that that was the original trigger. I'm not sure that most of us back that far would be able to do that. But it just feels so valuable to be able to make a connection to, even if you can't change whatever happened, to make that, make that connection in your own awareness about where these feelings first started from.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say that as a 2-year-old I had this level of awareness, right?
Sure.
It's only looking back upon it that I realized what I was thinking and feeling at the time. But just to put everything on the table, I went through several rounds of coaching, including a session of timeline therapy, where I actually was led back and guided through a process where I went back and found those initial trigger points. But I think what I might offer folks that are listening to this right now is when there's a serious trigger that's identified today, there's just a simple question that we can ask ourselves, which is when did I first experience the same event or an event like this, and just let the mind go back and find those points, because really that's what I was guided to do. It's quite simple once the big picture is kind of available to be seen, right? Just look back, find that moment, and even if it's not the first moment, finding something earlier in life that was similar, that was the part of that trigger formation, helps to release the amount of tension that the new trigger is creating, right? And that takes the energy out of the situation that we might be experiencing now.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. I also really appreciate the fact that you have developed this method based on your own experience. And I realize a lot of healers, a lot of practitioners will do that. But I think that that's probably one of the most valuable things that we can offer people that we work with, is to share our own experiences and what we can do to support them with that information. I think is super valuable. So congratulations. I think that's awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's great to be able to share what was trauma and what became a gift, that was generated from the release of that trauma and the finding really of the solution that became the DK method. Absolutely.
Right, right. Excellent. So I want to get to the book. So I wonder, first of all, why did you want to write a chapter in our book?
Actually, what was interesting was that I got a call from Scott Holmes, and he was at first it was just a simple networking call, and I'm not recalling the exact circumstances as to how we got on the phone, but for whatever reason we were chatting about this, and I was just getting a sense of Scott's, just where his heart was, right, and what he was looking to develop for himself and for other men, and then he mentioned the project itself, and I was just thinking, wow, this just seems like there was just a resonance. I couldn't explain a logic behind it. It wasn't like I did like a project assessment or anything like that. I just said there's something that resonates about being a part of this, and with Scott's invitation, that's really all I needed, right? I heard his heart, and I gathered that he's pulling together folks of a heart like his, and I thought, well, if he can pull together 20 or 30 folks like me, right, that we all resonate together and share our stories and generate some serious healing power through our combined writing efforts and through the publishing of this book, I'm in for sure.
Yeah. Oh, great. And you know what? That's awesome, because that whole connection between an author and the project itself, I think is amazing. And it's happened for me. It's happened through every book. and that's really a really good way to determine if somebody needs to be part of this. If they're coming, you make those connections, those energetic connections, and feel it out. And yeah, so for you to feel that coming in, I think is awesome. And yeah, I think it's only going to make the book even better.
What's really cool also about the group of authors that we have is that we're all heading in different directions and serving different communities and are in different places, but somehow we're all heading on the same path. Yes. And it's just amazing to feel that. And even if I haven't yet had the opportunity to really spend serious time with many of the authors yet, it's like we're already spending time together. So it's just a neat method of connection here that we've got.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, and I think the common theme is that everybody wants to be able to support men, and support transcendence of men, the healing, which leads me to my next question, which is your definition of transcendence. everybody's all over the map with this. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
I actually have a couple of thoughts on transcend. Of course, transcendence is a big word, and
Yes.
I am not sure that I ever used it before joining this project. I use the word transformation a lot. I think of it from a perspective of working on something, right? And a lot of this is how we characterize the problem that we solved, right? First of all, by characterizing it as a problem in and of itself, which it may or may not be, and then the process that we went through to either experienced or perhaps worked on ourselves to find the solution that we now offer, right? And that's when we so one can think of it as a transformation, right? A movement from a point A to a point B. But now the transcendence is a much bigger concept, right? So now from that point of view, I'm thinking, okay, if what if I hadn't made the choice, and what if I hadn't ever reached the ocean, and what if I was, if you will, stuck and remained stuck in the situation of anxiety, chronic anxiety and panic that I had found myself in, and had no choice but to simply manage my way through it. Well, that would have generated a story, right? Going forward, that probably would have led to some, some prescriptions and some different kinds of therapies, and likely a care and management progression, which would have kept me trapped, if you will, right? So, the first element of transcendence that I see is being free of those stories that are almost written for us if we don't take the action, right? If we don't take the step and make the commitment to make a change once we see the opportunity. So that's the first aspect of transcendence, that when you ask that question, what I see, right? And the second
I
one
get that.
is that I've realized throughout my life, and not just in the work or the corporate environment, but also in my personal life and my spiritual life, a lot of what I learned over the years was molds. How to fit in, right? How to fit into a church, how to fit into to being not just a like a attendee, but actually a contributor. How to fit into a corporate environment, and not just be a worker, but to be a leader in that environment. What that mold looks like, what the mold of being a father looks like, and then there's the molds, not just the ones that I put upon myself, but there's the molds that the community that I'm a part of, or society at large, or maybe the media might place upon me, or that I might perceive that they're placing upon me, right? So there's all these molds that come together and create this composite, DK, this is how you're to be, right? And when I look back on my life, and especially as I'm writing this chapter, I'm looking back on my life and thinking, wow, I spent a lot of it just trying to fit into molds, right?
Yeah.
And to me, transcendence for me involved becoming free of that effort, right? Where now I can just be free to be myself, and free to take on whatever I wish to take on, or not take on whatever I wish to release, and just to really put the energy into the joy of being, and not so much the rigor and requirement of doing, and also the energy, the huge cost of energy that is required to create a persona that might fit someone else's idea of who I should be, right? What in whatever flavor you might call out, right? And just having that release of all that energy drain that's created when fostering and developing this perception in the minds of others, or even in the mind of myself, that okay, I'm acceptable now. Once with that freedom came out the return of all the energy, just to be, and just to kind of, if you will, reintegrate with my own self. And to me, that's transcendence.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. I love that. So, when you're talking about transcendence, obviously there is that piece where you have let go, and then you become yourself, which for me is why finding your voice is meaningful, and I often kind of do this: transcendence, finding your voice, transcendence, finding your voice. Being for me, finding your voice for me is actually being authentically yourself, right? Knowing that, being that, without any of that, you need to be this, you need to be that, you need to be something else. Just be you. So at what point, you talked about being in the water, right? Then that was a bit of a pivotal moment for you. You also talked about Scott and him coming with his heart, and I often say that that's what Scott does. He leads with his heart. So at what point would you say that your heart was affected by the work that you did?
I would say that my heart was truly impacted. There was a time, let me back up for a little bit here, and it was just slightly before our project here took place, but there was a time when I was gearing up to launch a new corporate training program, where I would work with corporate teams on 12 different points of finding clarity and focus. And I am still launching that program. I'm actually in the process of leading my first beta group through that right now.
Hmm.
But at the time, I had a coach, and that coach was saying, "Okay, let's get you out on Clubhouse. Let's get you out here and there, and start talking about this program. And it just you've got one module ready, just teach that." And there was just so much energy there that just seemed to be that particular coach's energy, and I was looking for where am I in this, right? And that was really when I became more cognizant of all the molds that had been taking my energy in the past. And there was just something about that. I didn't understand it fully at the moment, but intuitively I said, okay, this is not the right time, not the right time to launch, and this isn't the right way to launch, because I hadn't found myself yet, right? In the full sense of transcendence, as you mentioned in the earlier question there. And I told that coach, I'll get back to you. I'm gonna take a break, and I didn't know how long it would be. It ended up being several months, and it was during that time that Scott called me as well, and we chatted about this opportunity, and it just seemed to be such a nice fit to also, as you mentioned earlier as well, kind of write out what this journey has really been for me. And it was a combination of a lot of different things, of some reflection, some other modalities that I had the opportunity to leverage that some of the authors talk about in the book. And I awoke to many different aspects of myself that I didn't realize before. And I would say, just to really put a line on it, once I discovered the part of me that's what I call and what others call as well, the inner child, and I found that inner child actually had been suppressed and repressed in many different ways in the way I had been living my life up to that point. And although I would say I'm still on the journey of releasing the energy of the inner child that's in me fully, I've come a long way on that. And really that if you want to put a point on when the turning point was, where I began to release molds and find and really find and begin to embody transcendence, it was when that I kind of reached my hand out to shake hands with that inner child again, and bring him back into the forefront, bring him out of the dark and into the light. And hopefully this is all making sense, right? But it was a very deep internal moment, where suddenly I could let more emotions flow, and I could let that inner child's wishes, if you will, just flow through without hitting a wall or being shielded or filtered. And that was a mess for a couple of weeks.
I
But
guess. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
but
deep work.
that was the pivotal moment where really I saw the molds for what they were, and then once I could see them, I could release them.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what you mentioned earlier about that whole, the transcendence, releasing what is there, to be whole, to be yourself. Yeah. And that it is very deep work. So good on you for taking that on. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely a challenge, but yeah, I'm completely different as a result of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. We are when we do that kind of healing work. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just want to connect again on the heart thing, because that has been something that for me, as the only woman involved in this project, that's been really, really important for me to see. Everybody is coming with, leading with their heart. There isn't. My experiences have been very different. Let's just put it like that. So to see that has been a real eye opener, and for me, it's an opening for not just men to read this book and to know, okay, look, as I'm reading this, this could be me. I can do this. I can do some release work. I can let go of the stereotypical behavior that I have been following forever and ever. So I think that that's a real big piece, but there's also the piece for partners of men. And that heart piece, I think, is the most valuable piece that I'm picking up as I listen to the stories and I meet everybody. And So maybe you can talk a little bit about your take on that.
But as in my take on so heart centered leadership, or how I found my heart, or
Well, whatever way you want to go. I was wondering about heart centered relationships, but I mean that can be. It doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. It can be any relationship that you want to refer to. I think it's
uh,
valuable either way.
absolutely. And I would say, of course, I have through some of the training and coaching environments that I've been a part of, I've had a lot of promptings to step into my heart, which has been a very what I would call a very rich and fertile ground for that. I'm not sure that if I hadn't had those promptings, if I would be as heart centered as I am today. But I just had the good fortune of going through some situations, being a part of certain communities and certain training events where there were a lot of questions of, where is your heart? Where has it gone? Where, to help the mind realize how far away from heart centeredness I had been, right? And really, from my point of view, it was the anxiety that drove it away, because really the one way to avoid feeling anxiety is to cut off feelings, right? Which tends to leave the heart, how would you say, rigid or
Yes.
shrouded, right? And so it wasn't just the release of the anxiety. Of course, that was the first part, but it was also the call to step into my heart that I was able to hear, and over time and over a few repetitions of that, I was able to experience what it was like to really, if you will, to step into my heart, right, and get out of my head, right. I spent a lot of time up here as an engineer, as a manager, as, if you will, in the corporate environment, as a politician, and just always thinking and strategizing, and so that has all the blood flow sitting up here in my head, right. But to hear that encouragement of, well, what about stepping into your heart for just a moment, and just to feel the energy come from here and just settle here for just a moment, and how different that felt the first time it happened, and then to realize that really to do that actually increases my power rather than decreasing it. So to see that as a positive outcome, and then to see how I work with clients, how I work with colleagues. I have I work with a business partner that the two of us together work with clients sometimes. And just when I was able to find my way into my heart, and join meetings in a different way, and to share from my heart without filtering it all through the mind, without worrying about what they were all going to think about what I was saying, but just to share honestly, openly, straight from the heart, generated some very powerful results. And so I had that great reinforcement as well, where when I could see how sharing from the heart and being in the heart was impacting the environment around me and the folks I was working with, I was just like, okay, I'm hooked, right? So it was a combination of those things where, I had a little bit of courage to be vulnerable, to step out and into more of a heart centered, more intuitive approach, and then to see the results and to see how powerful they were and how much more valuable they were than just a simple cerebral logical approach that perhaps you would have seen me do in the past. That really created the pivot for me, and now I'm finding that I'm leading mostly from my heart these days, and very little from the head. I mean, I still use the strategic, but
Of course.
it's coming from both places now, right? So I've got heart energy in it, and really for me to be motivated, if my heart isn't in whatever I'm working on, it's not the greatest feeling, and so that helps guide me into the projects that I really should be a part of, and those that perhaps I want to step back from a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. And that, of course, brings in your intuition and all kinds of good stuff, I imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I feel a
Yeah.
little bit smarter
Yeah.
having made that step. Yeah,
Well, heart smart, right? That's a
yeah,
thing. Isn't it a thing? I think
exactly,
it's a thing.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's really powerful work. And it would have been powerful for you, obviously, but really powerful for the people that you were with in the meeting that you described. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. So, speaking of powerful, tell us about your hopes and dreams for this book.
my hopes and dreams for this book are that it gets in the hands of at least. I mean, I just to break it down to one person, right? If this book had hit the hands of one person who is struggling but doesn't know that they are, and has the opportunity to read the stories, and maybe just the ones that they resonate with, or maybe this person reads the entire book and gets a flavor of all of the author's journeys, ideally, and how each of us found our way of transcendence, and to have that open their heart, to be willing to either reach out to us, or even to find their own path to transcendence. That would be mission accomplished for me. That would be worth every moment that we spent on this, and every penny, all the investment made. Just if we can hit one person with this book and essentially save their life, that's what would make it worth it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that will be multiplied over many people and not just one.
Yeah, I think so too, and I also agree that it's life-saving work. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's hope that there will be more than one.
I expect so.
Yeah, me too. So is there anything else, DK, that you want to share while you have the floor?
Well, Dianna, I just once again appreciate that we had this time today to chat about what I'm working on, as well as the opportunity that we have coming together for the Find Your Voice project here. And thank you again for the opportunity to contribute a chapter to this particular work and be a part of this wonderful team of authors that y'all have assembled. And I just look forward to supporting everyone out there any way I can to find the way past the confusion that can come with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and to help folks find the clarity and focus that's really ours to be had if we would just take a deep breath and just release the mind generated chatter, talk, stress, anxiety that is available to be released just simply by grounding and taking a moment to really see and really become fully present in the moment and find the best way to move forward and make the right choice for ourselves. And not only that, but to just relax, enjoy life a bit more, right? So if I could have a message for today, it would just be to just take a moment to relax today as you're listening to this particular broadcast, and then take that relaxation and find a way to leave a little bit of good in the world as a result of it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that message. That's awesome. And thank you for being part of this. You know, it's being a book that's full of different stories. Each one is significantly different from the other. As you say, everybody seems to be on the same path, but you know, everyone's story is different, and yours is very, very unique. And I know that it will support other people reading it. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Dianna. Appreciate the opportunity.
So listeners, thank you very much for showing up today. We both appreciate that very much. And if you want to read a little bit more about DK's story, you're going to have to grab a book on August the 2nd. It's coming up really soon, and we're all really, really excited about that. And I also wanted to remind you that just by being here today and listening, you are kicking your own ass. You are creating whatever awareness you will out of what you've heard today, and even a teeny tiny bit is enough to make some shifts that you're looking for. So thank you very much for that, and I will see you later. If you like today's podcast, hit subscribe at the bottom on your way out, and come find me at cravemorelife.com for even more DIY ass kicking.